Hey guys, so Cheryl has been announced, so it is time to take a look at her. So Cheryl is basically the what every Magic Meister wished they could be. Insanely powerful and snowbally right off the bat. Um, she is a very, very good light unit, very much worth getting and raising, assuming her banner isn't completely atrocious, which it likely will be. But let's just take a quick look at her, shall we? We'll start with her Kaigan, and as you can see, I have basically just maxed her out. And that is because every single one of her gates is good. Obviously, gate 1, gotta get that sweet, sweet HP. I'm sure most of the content now is becoming more difficult and global. That extra HP is starting to matter more and more. On to gate 2. It's going to upgrade your Beastmaster passive to give it 30% magic attack, on top of its already 10% agility to jump and all 10 all status resist. 30% magic attack? Yes, please. Now, her leader skill is pretty nuts. Under normal circumstances, it's 40% HP, 40% magic attack, and strong versus dark plus 20. Now, maxing this out is going to make it 40% HP, 20 plus 20 light all damage, 20% magic attack, and plus 20 strong versus dark, effectively making it a 10% HP less magic version of Moa's leader skill, which is one of the best leader skills in light. Very good leader skill to have. You don't actually have to max this gate if you don't want to, but this will let you run her with physical attack units in the light group as well as magic attack, making it slightly better. The only reason that I would normally do this that I suggest doing this is because it has that strong versus dark modifier on it, which effectively means that light all damage and strong versus dark together will give you a 40% damage modifier, which is not the best. Obviously, Magic is getting a 60% or a 60 stat modifier, but you know, 40 is better than nothing. Obviously, those don't just work out to like flat percents, and once you go through the whole convoluted like damage calculation, things get mixed up a bit. But in general, you want to just add your damage stats together, and that just gives you a relatively good indication of where your leader skill is going to land you, unless it's a weapon damage mod, in which case it works a little differently. Moving on to gate 4, naturally, it's basically gate 1 all over again. I just went over this in my other video. You're going to want it. And for her gate 5, I'll point out which skill gets upgraded once I get into the map, but it is going to change her X AoE, and you'll understand what I mean when I say that. It doesn't upgrade damage, it doesn't give you extra casts. In fact, it doesn't even make it cost less jewels. Instead, what it does is it makes it instant cast. And while it already had a fast cast time of 500, you can't beat instant cast. Worth getting if you ask me. Moving on to her gear, we're going to start with her Nenso here. She is basically just going to use the Lofia Nenso. Lofia Nenso itself, the base stat's pretty bad. Magic, defense, blah. The Lustberg group is going to be fire resistance, once again, kind of blah. However, we get to this next group here, which is going to give her HP, speed, and, well, water all damage, but naturally you're not going to be using that. You're basically just using it for the HP and the speed. And that's all she's going to get from this Nenso. She doesn't actually have a very specified Nenso that she wants to run. You can run any Lustberg Nenso on her, and it's fine. Like, obviously, you want to be smart about it. Like, you could run Yoros' Nenso on her if you wanted to, but you're not really going to be benefiting much from the fire exploit on that particular Nenso. So, just keep that in mind. Any Lustberg Nenso is going to work, but Lofia's Nenso arguably works the best. Now, as far as armor goes, I particularly like using the Arbor armor, or the Albea armor, and that's because it's 650 HP, which is a very high HP value, on top of 10 jewel gain and, 20 jewel gain and 10 initial jewels. You really can't get a much better piece of gear than this in terms of armor. It's really nice to have. However, you do have other options. The Tamamo VCR is another option. 700 HP and 15 jewel gain. As you can see, 50 HP is very much worth 5 additional jewel gain, if you ask me. What's a couple hundred HP versus the possibility that you might get an extra turn somewhere? 20 jewel gain is pretty nuts. We've already seen how broken the raid gear is, the raid pouch. So keep that in mind. Other armors like regen armor are also nice, but not necessarily mandatory. Light has no shortage of healing options, and if you really need a healing option, like just desperately, you can get a dedicated Miliki on the job. Um, Healing is not my main concern in the Dark group, and if you want, you could always get regen off of the Ultima Scarf instead. And yes, Ultima Scarf is good enough, it's worth running, even if you already have a piece of HP gear in some circumstances. Not always, but in some circumstances. Now, she does not have a dedicated weapon per se, however, I do have a preference. Um, but before I get into that, I just want to point out she does have a special piece of gear, and that is actually the Lofia VCR. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you an AoE heal and clock up. Um, it's a one-time use thing. The base stats on the piece of gear is 10 speed, 50 stop resistance, and 50 magic defense. Um, it is a piece of gear worth running if you're manualing. However, I mostly run on auto these days, unless I'm actually running really difficult content, so I don't always have this on her. However, as far as magic attack gear goes, anything is going to be good for her. Um, However, there are obviously going to be some things that are slightly better than others. Namely, you guys know how much I love this VCR, the Fujika VCR. 30 to max jewels, 40 magic attack, 10 water resistance. What a great piece of gear. The 30 max jewels, you really don't have max jewels anywhere else on your kit, and seeing as she is a mage, I forget, does she start with her max jewels? I can check that real quick. Does she start with her max jewels? And the answer to that is yes, she does. So, 30 max jewels is just going to be straight 30 extra jewels at your disposal right from the start of the map. Any jewelry gen is going to be more effective on her if you somehow get it on her. Um, Max jewels is a great stat to have on a mage. 40 magic attack, once again, you don't have a dedicated magic staff or anything. She can't even use staves for that matter. So it's a really nice piece of gear. Other pieces of gear include anything with magic attack that's not a staff, because once again, she can't use staffs. And for the final piece of gear, now I like the Soul VCR, if I'm not running the Lufia VCR, that is. If you're not running the Lufia VCR and you're on auto, the Soul VCR is the next best option. In my opinion, with 6 magic mod, 10 speed, and 20 to your hit rate, it's a great piece of gear. However, it's not the only piece of gear that you can run. Any magic mod piece of gear is going to work. The Kaya gear with 6 speed and 8 magic mod is once again also completely viable, as well as the Fiona VCR with the 20 hit rate and 10 magic mod. Now, obviously, you'll be missing out on some speed if you run it like this, which is why I like the Soul VCR personally. But you know, it's not always that big of a deal. You're gonna find as content gets harder and harder and harder, clock up and extra damage is going to become significantly more important than your base speed. Not that your base speed isn't important, it's more like the ability to one-hit KO your enemies is more important than speed. It doesn't matter how you do it, you just gotta kill them before they kill you. Not to say, once again, not to say that speed is not important, but I've found, at least in Tagatame, damage is becoming significantly more important, which is why I have begun running squishier and more damage-centered compositions in a lot of my content, rather than bulking up on HP and trying to outlast and whittle down my maps. But that's all I have to say on her gear. Let's go quick to her loadout. Now, I'm going to be running her unique main and her sub. I do think both are worth running. And it's less that the sub is, like, great and more like the other subs that she has access to just aren't. But her actual sub kit actually isn't too bad. But moving on from that, you do have two options for your reactive. You can either run her unique or you can run her Magia controller or your Magic Meister reactive. Pain Control is an insanely good reactive defensively, and I highly suggest using Pain Control, especially if you're autoing content. And that is because her unique reactive is going to be a counter, and it's going to hit in a 2 square radius around her, and it's going to hit your allies too if you're not careful. So I will have her unique reactive on just to show you guys what it does. But otherwise, yeah, you do want to be careful with this reactive because you can kill your own teammates with it. Obviously, you're going to want to run her Gate 2 passive from her Beastmaster, and I run Clever Charge. I don't really see a reason to run anything else, honestly. Um, if I go over to her actual main passive, it gives her HP, 15% HP and minus 33 cast time ratio, which I just think doesn't compare to what what Clever Charge can bring. Cheryl does do enough damage; she can get some KOs right off the bat. Even though she does need to kill to get that snowball going, Clever Charge is a pretty good snowball. We all know that Magic Meisters are good units, so yeah, there's no reason to not abuse that. Let's go ahead and hop into... I did not want to do that. Let's go ahead and hop into a map now. And we'll show off what she can do. Now, obviously, I'm going to be running with Cheryl's leader skill, because Cheryl has a great leader skill. No reason not to run with it. Turn skill animations on. Now, a lot of Cheryl's skills are going to have secondary effects, so you might not be able to see it because the things are going to instantly die on jacked up speed. But just keep this in mind that she does have other things that she can do other than just damage. But on the first one, this is going to be a percent HP buff. In this case, it's going to be 40% HP for 3 turns. Or, it's technically 2, I guess, because it's turn action start 3. So that's normally 2 turns after it's been cast. It includes the turn that you cast it. Honestly, I don't ever use this, mainly because if I need HP up, I'll use a Forecaster. Phalily obviously fare a lot better as her HP buff is permanent and gives 10% more HP. But this does do well in a pinch. Now this next one for 35 joules, this is the upgraded instant cast skill. As you can see, it's got a rather unique AoE to it. And this AoE is actually a lot more convenient than you would think. And as you can see, right off the bat with just the leader skill, Cheryl can hit 6k in this AoE on dark units. It's pretty nutty. And I know that 6k doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember that she has not charged up, she has not snowballed at all. This is just flat stats with just a single leader skill. No buffs. 6k. Now moving on to the next skill. We have this for 25 joules. And as you can see, damage is 0. And that is because this doesn't do damage. Instead, it's a light resistance debuff. It's going to work for 2 turns after you cast it, including the turn that you cast it. It's 3. So the idea would be is that you go in with Cheryl at the beginning of the turn, and you cast this on whatever enemy you want to decimate, and then you follow up with other light units. Once this gets upgraded with the quest unlock in our Babel Tactics, it'll also add 100 reaction block resistance, which I honestly am not too familiar with the whole reaction block mechanic. I never really paid much attention to it. But yeah, that is a thing. And I will show you guys what these skills look like. I'm just kind of going through so that way I can show you the damage on the dark unit just before I kill it. Moving on to the next skill. This is going to be her main single target damage skill for 50 joules here. Obviously, damage is pretty nice. Almost 8,000 damage, once again, with no snowball and no buffs. And this is going to have a cast speed of 350 and give minus 50 reaction block resistance. But yeah, other than that, it's essentially just single target DPS. Nothing really to write home about. And finally, for the 45 joules down below, this is a centered AoE, not too unlike the Magic Meister self-centered AoE. It's going to have a Dark Exploit modifier on it, so keep that in mind. It'll do extra damage to dark units. But yeah, that's pretty much it, at least as far as her main kit goes. Moving on to her sub-kit. So this first attack, or first skill here, is going to be a bind, and you guys should all know what this does by now. It just prevents your opponent from moving. And I think my one cat's trying to kill the other cat. That's fine. I don't need to break that up. They'll be fine. Moving on to the next one, we have a self-centered AoE, and this is going to cast Daze, and this will prevent you from using physically offensive moves. All of you should know that right now. I also call Daze No Act, which most people in Japan just call it No Act. On to the next one. So this is going to be single target damage and agility minus 30% for 3 turns. Not a hard-hitting skill, obviously, but speed down is always a nice thing to have in a kit. I'm sure a lot of you right now who are playing around with your Black Killer Masamune would agree. Having speed down in a damage-dealing kit is never a bad thing. And finally, for the final trick, she has another AoE, and this is going to disable buffs. And I don't think I really have to explain why disabling buffs is nice. It's just a nice trick to have in your kit. As you can see, this sub-kit is significantly better than the Magic Meister sub-kit, but that doesn't mean that you can't run the Magic Meister sub-kit if the need arises, but I don't really see a situation where that would be an issue. And if you're running the Lofia Nenso, you will have access to this 80 Joule water attack that will do almost no damage, because it's not really supposed to do damage. Honestly, I never use that. So, let's go ahead and show off some stuff. I'll go ahead and get her snowballed up a bit, and then I'll hit the 1 unit for whatever I can hit it for. The dark unit. Let's see if I can get this guy here to attack me so I can show off the reactive as well. Well, these guys don't seem to be taking any turns. I already showed that one off, so I guess I'll show this one off. See, and as you can see, it has a knockback effect, and it'll damage all enemies surrounding her. So, if there were multiple enemies surrounding me at that very moment, she would have hit them all, including allies. And what else do I have here? Now I won't be able to show off the last skill and show off the single target, so I'm just going to go ahead and show off the single target and call it there. It's nothing super interesting. Her attacks don't like do anything that's like super over the top. And as you can, and I don't know if any of you saw it, I believe that said it was going to do 13,000 damage, which is up from 8,000 damage after just killing those units. And there you have it, guys. That's Cheryl. Alright, so final thoughts on Cheryl, because I do have some final thoughts on Cheryl. This is a core light unit. I describe her as core. She appears on several of my teams. She is one of my early choices when I'm building a light team. Cheryl almost always comes up, and she will always be in my light magic teams, especially now that I have her completely Kaiganed. She is very much worth getting. But is she worth whaling? And this is the same answer I am always going to say. It really depends on your budget and how much you're willing to drop down for her. If you can afford her, go ahead. What I do know is that when she came around to Japan, she was not super free to play friendly. They did give out quite a few of her shards for free. In fact, the Lust Babel itself gave out, I think, at least 25 of her shards that you'll be able to use for her Kaigan. But remember that if you want to Kaigan her and you don't want to wait for her hard quest, you're going to have to light shard her and then somehow get her shards to Kaigan her, as she will definitely be released with at least 3 gates in Global. And I don't know if Global will release her Gates 4 and Gate 5 later or sooner. But if they release her Gates 4 and 5 earlier rather than later, well, Cheryl with Gate 4 HP is going to be doing some serious tanking along with damage. She's got a great mix of survivability and damage output with access to pain control. So keep that in mind. I know that she was, if I remember correctly, and I don't really participate in Arena or anything. I just collect the free gems from it every day, so I get 27 free gems each day. My understanding of it is she was basically terrifying in Arena because she essentially just one-shot everything with impunity. So, obviously the situation in Japan is a little different than the situation in Global, but keep in mind that she is a phenomenal unit that, if you have, she will be a great asset. Would I personally wail for her? As a packed player, I'd say no. As a packed player, I would not wail for Cheryl. If you do manage to get her, she is very good, but she does really need her Kaigan for survivability purposes, if nothing else. And the Gate 2 does do add a significant amount to her damage, and it's kind of important to run her Gate 2 for the extra speed, and the extra jump can never hurt. Having a 4 move, 4 jump unit is super nice, as there's very few maps where her range of movement is limited. And with all of the nice AoEs and tools in her kit, she's a very versatile unit. I will go out here and say that I am not a huge fan of Cheryl's design. It's just not one of my favorites. But, I kind of suck it up and I deal with it because she is a powerhouse of a unit. Anyways, guys, that's all I have to say on Cheryl for today. If you have any questions, as always, leave them in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them if I have time. Obviously, I've just been a little bit busier recently, and, yeah. Thanks for watching, as always, and I will see you next time.